The wind didn't just howl, it screamed. It was a high, thin, mechanical sound that vibrated against the double-paned glass of my A-frame cabin, a relentless pressure seeking a way in. I sat at the kitchen island, the topographic map of Silver Creek spread out under the amber glow of the single pendant light. I tracked pressure changes the way other people tracked texts because up here, at 8,000 feet, weather was a warning, not a conversation starter. The coffee in my enamel mug was black, scalding, and necessary. I wasn't sleeping. I rarely slept when the barometric pressure dropped below 980 millibars. My 6-year-old son, Amos, was asleep in the loft above, his breathing a soft, rhythmic counterpoint to the gale outside. That was my world. The data on the table, the boy in the loft, and the silence I had carefully constructed around us. In the corner, under a heavy canvas tarp, sat the old ham radio rig I kept for emergencies, a habit from years of working contract jobs where cell towers didn't matter. I picked up my drafting pencil, marking a potential stress fracture on the northern ridge of the map. My hand was steady. It was always steady. It was the rest of me that felt like a coiled spring, waiting for a snap that had already happened 3 years ago. Then, a sound broke the rhythm. Not the wind, not the settling of the timbers. 3 sharp, desperate raps on the heavy oak front door. I froze. My pencil hovered over the paper. No one came up here. The access road was a suggestion of gravel on a good day. In this storm, with visibility at 0 and wind chill hitting -20, it was a death trap. I stood up, sliding my feet into my boots, and walked to the door. I didn't ask who it was. I flipped the latch and shoved the heavy wood open against the pressure of the wind. A woman stood on my porch. She was wrapped in a camel hair coat that probably cost more than my truck, clutching a leather briefcase to her chest like a shield. Snow was matted in her dark hair, freezing into an icy crown. Her mascara was smudged, and she was shaking so hard the briefcase rattled against her buttons. It was Hattie Ramirez, the CEO of Terra Group, the woman who signed my checks, the woman who had rejected my last 3 safety reports, and whom I had never met in person, only seen in glossy company newsletters, where she looked invincible. "My car," she gasped, her voice trembling against the wind. It slid. The embankment. She looked past me, into the warmth of the cabin, then back at my face. She didn't recognize me. To her, I was just a man in a flannel shirt, standing between her and freezing to death. I need a phone," she stammered, teeth chattering violently. "I have a board meeting at 9. I looked past her. The storm was whiting out the tree line. The snow was coming down sideways, erasing the world. "You're not making a meeting at 9, Miss Ramirez," I said, my voice flat. "You're barely making it inside alive." I stepped back and ushered her in. I had a kid asleep upstairs. I wasn't about to let anyone freeze on my porch, and I wasn't about to let anyone die on my property, period. She stumbled over the threshold, bringing a gust of ice and the scent of expensive perfume, sandalwood, and roses into my sanctuary. It clashed violently with the smell of wood smoke, machine oil, and old coffee. I leaned my weight against the door, forcing it shut. The silence returned instantly, heavy and sudden. "Sit," I said, pointing to the worn leather armchair by the wood stove. She didn't move. She stood in the middle of the rug, water dripping from her coat onto my floorboards. "I can't sit. I have to call my assistant." The signal dropped 3 miles back. "If I don't call in, they'll vote to liquidate the Silver Creek project. They'll strip the assets." "The landline is down," I said, walking to the kitchen to pour a second mug of coffee. She stared at me, her jaw working like she was chewing glass. She glanced at the dead Wi-Fi icon on her phone, then at the clock on the wall, as if staring hard enough could force time to obey. "Dark? For how long? Until the ice melts off the lines. Could be hours. Could be days." I walked back to her and held out the mug. "Drink. You're bordering on hypothermia. Your lips are blue." She took the mug. Her hands were shaking so hard the hot liquid rippled, threatening to spill. She took a sip, wincing at the heat, but she drank. "You're Davis," she said, her eyes narrowing slightly as the shock wore off and the CEO programming kicked back in. Kendrick Davis, the surveyor, the one who keeps sending back the expansion plans with unsafe stamped on them in red ink. The one who keeps the mountain from sliding onto your investors' luxury condos, I corrected calmly. Yes. She looked around the cabin. It was small, efficient, and aggressively masculine. No clutter, just tools, books, and the few toys Amos had left out. You live here, she said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. Full time. It's closer to the Rock, I said, and the rent is cheap. Daddy? A small, sleepy voice drifted down from the loft. Hattie flinched, looking up. Amos was standing at the railing, rubbing his eyes, clutching his stuffed bear by the ear. He was wearing his dinosaur pajamas. He looked down at the shivering woman in the expensive, ruined coat. Is that the snow fairy? Amos asked, serious as a judge. Hattie blinked. The tension in her shoulders dropped an inch. She looked at Amos, then at me, realizing for the first time that I wasn't just an employee number in a file. I was a father. No, she whispered, her voice cracking. Just, Hattie. Go back to sleep, bud, I said softly. The storm woke us up. Just a guest from work. Amos nodded, accepting this logic, and padded back to his bed. I turned back to Hattie. She was looking at the ladder to the loft, a strange expression on her face. You have a son? I do. And no wife? Not anymore, I said. Drink your coffee, Miss Ramirez. The adrenaline is going to crash in about 5 minutes, and I'd prefer you be sitting down when it happens. By 7 a.m., the gray light of dawn had filtered through the windows. But the storm hadn't broken. It had settled in, heavy and suffocating. Hattie sat at my kitchen table, her laptop open but useless. She was vibrating with anxiety, tapping her manicured nails against the wood. Tap, tap, tap. It was driving me insane. There has to be a way, she muttered. A satellite phone? A radio? I have a sat phone, I said, cracking eggs into a cast iron skillet. The sizzle filled the room. The battery is dead. The charger is in the glove box of my truck. So get it, she snapped. My truck is buried under 4 feet of drift, Hattie. The wind is gusting at 60 miles an hour. If I go out there to dig, I risk frostbite or getting lost in the whiteout just to get a charger. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Her fingers locked around the chair back until the wood creaked. She checked the clock again, then stopped, looking at the hands like she was afraid to watch them hit 9. You're remarkably calm about this, she said, her voice tight. Do you realize what happens if I miss this vote? Greg, my VP of operations, has been trying to oust me for 6 months. He wants to strip mine this ridge. If I'm not there to present your data, he wins. You lose your contract, I lose my company. I can't fix the weather, I said, flipping the eggs. And I can't dig out the truck until the wind dies down. Safety protocol? She repeated, bitter. Is that all you care about? Protocols? When you're 40 miles from a hospital? Yes. I plated the eggs and set them in front of her. She looked at the food, then at me. Her eyes were hard, flashing with frustration. If you want, you can take the armchair, I'll keep my distance, and when the wind drops, I'll walk you back to your car. I said, setting the fork down beside the plate. No pressure, just options. But you need calories. She stared at me. For a second, I thought she was going to throw the plate. Then, she let out a long, shaky breath and picked up the fork. Fine, she said. Thank you. The cabin was small. Usually, it fit Amos and me perfectly, a tight, efficient orbit. With Hattie Ramirez occupying the center of it, the walls felt like they were shrinking. She was a pacer. She walked the length of the rug, checking her phone every 30 seconds, sighing loudly. She was chaos in my ordered world. Can you stop? I asked from my desk in the corner. I was trying to manually calculate the load-bearing capacity of the ridge for her report. The report she couldn't send, but the one she would need if we ever got out of here. I can't stop, she said, hugging her arms. She had taken off the coat and was wearing a silk blouse that looked ridiculous next to the wood stove. My life is imploding. Greg is probably calling the vote right now. He's telling them I'm unreliable, that I'm emotional, that I couldn't handle the pressure of the merger, so I disappeared. Pacing won't fix it, I said, keeping my eyes on the calculations. It just uses oxygen. And sitting there with your ruler, Will? I set down my pencil. I turned the chair around. This isn't a ruler. It's a scale rule. And yes, it will. Because when the power comes back, you need proof that the substrate is unstable. I'm building your case. She stopped mid-stride. She walked over to the desk and looked down at the map. Her eyes scanned the contour lines I had drawn, the red marks indicating shear zones. You really think the shale layer is slipping? She asked, her voice shifting from frantic to professional. I don't think, I said. I know. I measured the inclinometers yesterday. The ground moved 2 inches in a month. If Greg puts heavy machinery there, the whole ridge slides into the valley, and it takes the access road with it. She looked at the map, then at me. Why didn't you just email this? I tried. Greg told me to stick to surveying and leave the engineering to the big boys. Hattie let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a dark sound. Greg. Of course. He thinks geology is just a suggestion. She rubbed her temples. I'm sorry. I didn't know he blocked the data. You're the CEO, I said. You're supposed to know. It was harsh. I saw her flinch. I wanted to apologize, to soften it, but I kept my hands in my pockets. The truth was, the only tool I had. You're right, she said quietly. I let him handle the ops because I was too busy handling the board. I took my eye off the ground. She reached out and touched the map. Her finger traced the line of the ridge. Her nails were perfectly manicured, a stark contrast to the rough paper. Show me, she said. Show me the math. If I'm going to fight him, I need to understand the physics. I pulled up a stool. Sit down. For the next hour, we weren't a surveyor and a CEO. We were two people staring at a problem. I showed her the friction coefficients. She didn't just follow my numbers, she attacked them. She pointed out a variable I had missed regarding the updated county drainage code. Here, she said, tapping the stress test results. If we increase the gradient to 4% to match the new code, the shear strength of the clay layer drops by 12%, which means my safety estimate was actually conservative, I finished, realizing she was right. The ridge is even more unstable than I thought. She grabbed a red pen from my jar and circled the calculation. Greg is going to try to use the old county maps. We can bury him with this. We just need to rerun the load distribution. It increases your construction costs by 15%, I warned. I don't care about the cost, she said, looking me in the eye. I care about the mountain not falling down. I felt my pride loosen its grip. I slid my calculator to her side of the table and let her drive. By the time the light shifted outside, the stove had burned lower, and the clock was inching close to 9. Just then, the wind slammed against the cabin, rattling the window frames. Amos called out from the loft, Dad? Is the roof okay? Roof is solid, buddy, I called back. I looked at Hattie. She hadn't flinched. She was staring at the red circle on the page, and for the first time that morning, I stopped seeing a suit and started seeing a strategist. The power flickered and died at noon. The silence returned, heavier this time. The hum of the refrigerator. Well, Hattie said into the sudden gloom. That's it. The battery backup on the local grid is gone. We have the wood stove, I said, and we have daylight for another 4 hours. I moved to the living room to stoke the fire. Amos came running down from the loft with a plastic tub of Legos. Do you want to build a base? He asked Hattie. I expected her to brush him off. I expected her to retreat into her anxiety. Instead, she looked at the boy, then at the dead laptop, and sighed. She sat down on the rug, folding her expensive trousers beneath her. Only if it has a reinforced perimeter, she said seriously. I hear the snowdrifts are dangerous. I watched them from the kitchen island. Hattie Ramirez, who ran a Fortune 500 company, was seriously discussing the structural integrity of a plastic brick wall with my son. She wasn't pacing anymore. She was focused. You need a cross brace here, she told Amos, pointing to a leaning tower. Otherwise, gravity wins. Dad says gravity always wins, Amos replied, clicking a red brick into place. Hattie looked up at me. Her guard was down. She looked younger, softer in the firelight. Her hair was coming loose from its bun. Dad is right. I turned away to chop vegetables for stew. I felt a pull in my chest, a dangerous gravity of its own. I ignored it. I focused on the knife, the board, the rhythm. Chop, slide, chop. She walked into the kitchen 10 minutes later. Can I help? You're a guest, I said. I'm a refugee, she corrected. And I'm useless with Legos. Amos fired me because I tried to zone his parking lot. I suppressed a smile. I handed her a peeler and a carrot. Don't cut towards yourself. We worked in silence for a moment. It was a companionable silence, different from the icy tension of the morning. The smell of beef stew and wood smoke filled the small space, pushing back against the cold. Why do you live out here, Kendrick? She asked. You have a master's degree. I saw your personnel file. You could be running a department in Denver. You could be making double what we pay you. I don't like departments, I said. I like rocks. Rocks don't lie to you. They don't change the deal halfway through. Who changed the deal? She asked quietly. Life, I said. I paused, the knife hovering over a potato. My wife passed 3 years ago. A car accident. Just bad weather and bad luck. Hattie stopped peeling. She didn't offer the usual platitudes. She just nodded. I'm so sorry. The city was too loud after that. I continued, my voice low. Everyone looked at me with that pity face. Amos needed quiet. So did I. Up here, no one looks at you. You just do the work. You secure the perimeter. She watched her own hands working the peeler. I did the opposite, she murmured. When my divorce happened, I bought the penthouse. I filled my schedule so tight I couldn't breathe. I thought if I moved fast enough, the loneliness couldn't catch me. Did it work? No, she admitted. It just made me tired. And it made me miss things. Like safety reports. Like life. She looked at me. Is that what you're doing? Running? I thought I was chasing, she said. Chasing the company, the success, the approval. My ex-husband said I was married to the job. He wasn't wrong. But now, she looked at the window, blocked by snow. Now I'm sitting in a cabin with no signal, peeling a carrot. And it's the first time in 5 years I haven't felt like I'm drowning. Maybe you're just looking for solid ground, I said. Our eyes met. I kept my hands on the cutting board, maintaining the boundary, but the room went quiet in a way that made every pop of the firewood sound loud. Maybe, she whispered. The storm broke around 4 p.m., but the temperature plummeted. The thermometer by the window read 10 below zero. I was checking the wood level when I saw it, a dark shape moving against the white snow near the equipment shed, 50 yards down the slope. What is it? Hattie asked, sensing my tension. The shed door, I said. Wind must have blown the latch. The main generator is in there. So, if the generator freezes, we have no backup heat if the wood runs out, and no way to power the well pump. We lose water. I grabbed my heavy parka from the hook. I have to go secure it. I'm coming, Hattie said immediately. No, I said, zipping up. It's dangerous. The wind chill is lethal. Stay here with Amos. I need to get my briefcase from the car, she said, stepping in front of me. It has the hard copy of the original environmental contracts, the ones Greg is trying to bury. If the digital files are wiped, that paper is the only thing saving my company. Hattie, I'm coming, Kendrick. You fix your generator. I get my life back. She was stubborn. I respected that. I grabbed a pair of thick wool socks and Amos's oversized snow boots from the rack. "Put these on," I ordered. I took my own spare canvas coat off the hook. It was huge, stained with oil and earth, and held it out. "Your coat won't stop the wind. This will." She slipped into the coat. It swallowed her. I zipped it up to her chin, my knuckles brushing her jaw. I pulled my hands back quickly, shoving them into my pockets. "Stay behind me," I said. "Step where I step." The cold was a physical weight. We trudged through the snow, the wind whipping ice crystals into our faces like sand. I reached the shed and wrestled the door closed, securing the latch with a steel carabiner. "My car is just there," Hattie yelled over the wind, pointing to a mound of snow by the road. We waded over. She dug through the shattered driver's side window, retrieving the leather briefcase. She clutched it to her chest, a look of triumph on her face. "Got it!" she shouted. As she turned to step back toward me, it happened. She stepped on a patch of ice hidden under the powder. Her feet went out from under her. She slid 5 feet down the embankment, hitting a buried log with a sickening thud. "Hattie!" I scrambled down the slope. She was sitting in the snow, her face white, clutching her right ankle. "I'm okay," she gasped, grimacing. "Just twisted it. Don't move." I knelt beside her. I ran my gloved hands over her boot, checking for alignment. "It's sprained," I said. "Badly. Can you stand?" She tried to push herself up, but her leg buckled instantly. I caught her before she hit the snow again. "I can't," she whispered, looking terrified. Not of the pain, but of the helplessness. "I can't walk." The wind roared, cutting through the trees. We couldn't stay here. The temperature was dropping by the minute. "Good thing I can carry heavy loads," I said. I turned my back to her, arms around my neck. She hesitated. "I'm heavy." "The coat." "I carry 70-pound sample packs up vertical grades for fun, Hattie. Get on." She wrapped her arms around me. I hooked my arms under her legs and stood up. She pressed her face into the crook of my neck to hide from the wind. I could feel her shivering. Or maybe I was the one shivering. The walk back to the cabin was only 50 yards, but it felt like a mile. The snow dragged at my boots. Her weight was warm and solid against my back. She smelled of cold air and that lingering rose scent. I focused on my breathing. Step, plant, step, plant. I wasn't just carrying a CEO. I was carrying her. And for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't just surviving. I was protecting someone who actually wanted to be saved. Inside, I deposited her on the sofa. Amos watched with wide eyes from the loft ladder as I elevated her foot and packed it with snow wrapped in a kitchen towel. "Is she broken?" Amos asked. "Just bent," I said. "She's tough." Hattie looked at me, her face pale, hair plastered to her forehead. She looked at the clock on the wall. "I missed the meeting," she said dully. "It's 5:30. The board vote is over. Greg has the company." She slumped back against the cushions, the briefcase on the floor beside her. "I fought so hard," she whispered. "And I lost because of a snowbank." "Maybe not," I said. I stood up and walked to the corner of the room. I pulled a heavy canvas tarp off the bulky object I hadn't used in months. An old ham radio setup. Shortwave. "You said we were dark," she said, lifting her head. "Cell towers are dark," I said, flipping switches. The machine hummed to life. Powered by a marine battery I kept charged for emergencies. "Shortwave doesn't need towers. It bounces off the ionosphere. Who are you going to call?" "My assistant isn't listening to shortwave." "Not who. Where?" I spun the dial, listening to the static until a voice cut through. "Station K, 7Y, reading you clear." "K7Y, this is Silver Creek Outpost," I said into the mic. "I have emergency traffic. Please relay to Denver State Police Dispatch. Urgent safety violation. I need a case number." Hattie sat up, wincing. "Police?" "The investigation," I said. I looked at Hattie. Greg falsified the safety reports on the last site. I saw the data, but I couldn't prove he signed off on it. You can. The briefcase, she whispered. The hard copies. Exactly. Dispatch needs to know there is an imminent landslide risk. Requesting immediate stop work order and site inspector dispatch. I have the CEO on site with the documentation. The operator's voice crackled back. Copy. Silver Creek. Relaying to dispatch. Stand by for case number. I walked the microphone over to the couch. I held it out to her. This is it, Hattie, I said. You can let Greg win, or you can burn his play down. Hattie looked at the microphone. She looked at me. She took a breath, and I saw the steel come back into her spine. She took the mic. Her hand wasn't shaking anymore. She pressed the button. This is Hattie Ramirez, she said, her voice clear and commanding. I am formally requesting a safety hold on all Terra Group Ridge activities. I have evidence of falsified geotechnical data and criminal negligence. She looked at me as she spoke. She wasn't asking for permission. She was taking command. She refused the easy buyout Greg had offered her. She chose the hard, honest path. And she did it barefoot, in a cabin, holding a radio mic like it was a scepter. The next morning, the sound of diesel engines woke us. The plows had broken through. A state trooper SUV followed the plow up the drive. The investigation was open. The board vote was postponed pending the inspector's report this time. In writing. By noon, Greg's access badge was suspended. She had saved her company, or at least, lived to fight for it another day. I stood on the porch as she packed her briefcase. Her ankle was wrapped in an ace bandage I had applied. She leaned on a makeshift cane I'd carved from a branch. You saved me, she said. I just provided the comms, I said, leaning against the doorframe. You made the call. She stepped closer. She wasn't the polished CEO anymore. She was wearing my wool socks and my borrowed flannel shirt over her ruined clothes. She looked tired, messy, and beautiful. You were right, she said, about the rocks and the quiet. Hattie, I started, but I didn't know how to finish. I wanted to ask her to stay. I wanted to tell her that the quiet was going to be too loud when she left. I confessed something to you last night, she said, when I was half asleep on your couch. I nodded. You said you were lonely. I am, she said. But I don't think I have to be. Not if I find the right bedrock to build on. The trooper cleared his throat from the driveway, waiting. Hattie turned to him. Officer, Kendrick Davis is my site lead. Any decisions regarding access to the ridge go through him first. He speaks for me. She turned back to me, reached out, and took my hand. Her fingers were warm. I didn't pull away. I squeezed back, feeling the calluses of my palm against the softness of hers. Drive safe, I said, my voice rough. Watch the ice. I'll be back, she said, to return the socks. 2 weeks later, the snow was gone, replaced by the crisp clarity of high-altitude sun. I was in the yard, teaching Amos how to stack firewood. A car crunched up the gravel drive. Not a sedan. A sturdy, brand-new 4x4 with mud on the tires. Hattie stepped out. She wasn't wearing heels. She was wearing hiking boots and jeans. Nice truck, I said, leaning on my axe. I figured I needed something that could handle the terrain, she said, walking up the path. She held up a bag. I brought dinner. And Legos. A reinforced perimeter set. Amos cheered and ran to her. She hugged him, laughing, then looked at me over his head. The board reinstated me, she said. On one condition. I have to personally oversee the Silver Creek expansion to ensure strict safety compliance. Sounds like a lot of work, I said, walking toward her. You'll need a local consultant. Someone who knows the mountain. I have the best one in the state, she smiled. But he's expensive. He charges in coffee and quiet time. I think we can work something out, I said. Though Amos has strict rules about quiet time. No zoning discussions after 8 p.m. She laughed, a real, unburdened sound. She walked up to me. I dropped the axe. I took my hands out of my pockets. I brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. Welcome back, I said, I'm home, she replied. We stood there on the porch. I poured coffee into the same enamel mug I had used that first morning. This time, the wind was quiet, and so was the fear.